Well, crap. Hey guys, Chris with Wallowa Hikes. Last I saw you, we were talking about some tips and tricks for older hikers, and at the end of that video, I mentioned that I might be lost. So let's talk about that. This is a channel for new backpackers, and one of the biggest concerns for new backpackers is getting lost out in the woods. If you've been around a while, you've heard some of this before, but as a new backpacker, it's very important, just starting out, that you stay on established trails. No going off trail, looking for routes to the hidden lakes or mountains, or taking shortcuts. Stay on established trails. Generally, as a brand new backpacker, it's a good idea to start on a trail that's fairly popular and well signed. And most trails for backpackers do have good signage, so it makes it hard to get lost. In fact, the worst thing that generally will happen on an established trail is you might miss a side trail that you're supposed to take. So if you go the wrong way on an established trail, you're not really lost. You're on a trail that you didn't intend to be, but you're safe. If you're lost, or you don't know where you are, chances are you got off of those established trails. So what do you do when you think you're lost? Good question. If you think you're lost, first thing you need to do is stop. Just stop where you are. Definitely helpful to sit down. Pay attention to your breathing and do not panic. If you're not used to being out in the woods and you're new at backpacking and suddenly you don't know where you are, the instinct is to panic. You're going to need to keep your head. So sit down, breathe. Just take a moment, gather your thoughts, and calm yourself down. All right, we're calm. Maybe not totally calm, but you got to keep your head. All right. So first of all, are you still on a trail? If you're still on a trail, you can just backtrack. And you may find where you missed a turn or whatever. You might not actually be on the wrong trail, in fact, but the only way to know that is if you have some sort of navigation. Now, I have always been a strong proponent of paper maps and compasses. The problem with that is if you don't know how to use a map and compass together, they're completely worthless. Nowadays, we've got GPS, we've got 1,000 different, maybe not 1,000, but we've got a bunch of apps for navigation. They're going to show you exactly where you are. They're going to show you the terrain. They're going to show you the trail. So that's fantastic. If you have that, great. But if your phone died or you don't have an app, if you've got a paper map, you're going to be able to figure out where you are. It really helps to have a compass. And I can't go into all of that here and teach you how to do all of that, because that would be a series of like 10, 15 videos, honestly. But it's not so complicated to get the basics. And if you read the book, Be Expert with Map and Compass, super, super old book, super helpful. And it will give you practice. It will teach you how to discover where you are based on landmarks, map, and the compass. All right. It'll also teach you how to find your way out. But if you don't have a map and compass and you don't have GPS, what are you going to do? Well, in the moment, just stay put. If you just start moving aimlessly without a plan in mind, it's possible you're gonna get more lost. And it's also possible you're really, really close to the trail or where you were supposed to be or where you thought you were. So if you just take off without a plan, that might make things worse. Several years ago, there was a gentleman and his wife and infant in southern Oregon, taking a road to the coast. The road was snowed in. They got stuck in the wilderness. And he took off, deciding to find help. And at some point he went away from the road, tried to follow a river downstream to civilization, and he died. And his wife and infant child were found alive in the car. So overall, staying put is a good idea, at least initially. But going back to stopping and keeping your head. All right, here we are. We're sitting, we're calm. Can we retrace our steps? Do you recognize anything around you? Do you remember which direction you were going when you realized you were lost? If so, backtracking is a good idea. And if you follow your steps backwards, most often in my experience, you find that you're really close to the trail and you just weren't really paying attention. You wandered off on maybe a deer elk track, and you're going to find where you were supposed to be. But if you panicked, that might not have happened, right? So it's helpful to backtrack, look around, see if you recognize anything. If you're not deep in thick forest, you may be able to see landmarks, mountains, a watchtower, maybe a river in the distance. That's going to help orient you to where you are in the big picture, right? If you know you were following a river that was on your right, and you find a clearing and you see that river, well, you'll know which direction you were going when you lost track of yourself. So use those landmarks. If you have a map and compass, you can actually triangulate exactly where you are on a map using prominent landmarks. So go read that book, for real. It's a good skill to have, and most people nowadays don't have that. So when I talked about the river, think of that in terms of a border. So things like rivers, ridge lines, you can think of those as bordering an area of the land. And so in using those, you can get a general sense of where you are. Just having an overview based on those borders, those ridges, those tree lines, those rivers, you're going to get an idea of where you were. And right now I'm assuming you don't have a map for some reason and your phone broke. Based on those boundaries, those borders, it's a little easier to figure out how to backtrack based on those, keeping those in mind, keeping those to one side of you. Hey guys, Future Chris here. Sorry to interrupt. If you find yourself off trail, you don't know where you are, take a buff or a shirt or just something brightly colored and hang it on a tree so that you can see it easily. And then that way, whichever direction you go to try to see if you can find something you recognize or find the trail, you're not going to get more lost as long as you can see that waypoint. So put something on a tree or wherever you can see it, keep it in sight. If you wander off, you don't get more lost because you can go back to where you were by seeing that waypoint. And if you go in a direction and you don't see anything familiar, and you go all the way around in a circle around that and see nothing, you can choose a direction that seems like maybe that's the right way. And as you get further away from that waypoint, you can hang another waypoint and do the same thing. So this way you can cover a radius just to see if there's anything familiar without just wandering around aimlessly, because you can always go back to that second waypoint, see the first waypoint, and get back to where you were. So just wanted to add that in because backtracking isn't always as easy as just knowing which way you came from. All right, let's go back to the woods. We all know that the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. If it's late afternoon and that sun is low in the horizon, that's generally west. Sometimes it is further north or south, but as the sun moves, it moves from east to west. Another thing is generally, now not always, but generally, moss is going to grow on the north side of trees. And if you're looking at mountains in the distance, in the northern hemisphere at least, there is going to be far more snow on the north side because the sun is, at the equator. So those south-facing slopes may be bare, and the north-facing slopes covered in snow. So that's another way to just get an orientation as far as north, south, east, and west. And so if you know where you came from, north, south, east, or west, those are things you can use for a general sense of which way you need to go if you're lost. You lost your way, you stayed put, you thought about where you're at, thought about backtracking. Maybe you did that and you still feel like you're lost, or the sun is low on the horizon. You don't want to walk around at night. That's not going to help you get found. So, sometimes you may just need to set up a camp. Now, the good thing for you as a new backpacker is you're lost, but you're backpacking. So everything you need to survive a night is on your back. You're going to have your shelter. You're going to have food. And even if you don't have food, you're not going to die without food. Not for a long time. So you should have water. If you don't have water, you have a filter. So you've got a sleeping bag or a quilt. You're going to be fine. And sometimes things look a lot different in the morning, especially if we're panicked, we're scared. Things can look a lot different. So sometimes it's not a bad idea just to huddle up and make camp. And maybe things look different in the morning. And if nothing else, you absolutely know which way is north, south, east, and west in the morning as the sun is coming up. And again, if you have no idea where you came from, if you don't have a map, well, I'm sorry, but you just were not prepared to be out there. So what you need to do is watch my videos. And by the time you'll get out there, hopefully this never happens. Now look at this. It would appear someone's been here before. So after traveling in the direction I thought maybe I should be going, I have found this creepy ass Blair Witch ring here, but obviously humans have been here. So that's a good thing, right? You've stayed put all night, you've stayed warm, you had some food. You're a little more level-headed now. All right, take a look around. Again, we're gonna backtrack, but if you absolutely are not confident that you're gonna find your way, as long as you've left an itinerary with somebody, you can stay put. Somebody's gonna find you. And the reason for that is because, again, one way to avoid being lost or staying lost is to create a plan for if you do get lost. You should have an idea of where you're going, obviously, how long you're going to be out, and where you're going to go, where you're planning on camping, and when you expect to be back. So this itinerary is super helpful to you to know where you're going, but it's important to leave it with somebody at home. I generally leave an itinerary with my wife and my mother. And I have a Garmin in reach, and I highly recommend having some kind of a satellite SOS messenger. Because if you feel like you're hopelessly lost, you haven't left an itinerary with anybody, you can hit that button. Somebody's going to come get you. But let's say you don't. They're pretty expensive. If you leave an itinerary with somebody and instructions on what to do when you're not back, when you say you're going to be back, then they're going to be able to call for help. And with that itinerary, as long as you have generally stuck to it, people are going to find you. So, have an itinerary. Leave an itinerary. Let people know. If I always say, don't call for help on the day that I'm expected to be back. Because I might get delayed, or I might decide to stay out longer. And I don't want search and rescue coming and looking for me if I'm out having fun. But that's another reason to bring a little extra food when you go backpacking, just in case you get delayed. So as long as you leave an itinerary, people are going to know where to look if you decide that you're just going to stay put and wait for help. And that's okay. You can always look for higher ground, open area. Higher ground is going to give you a better view of the whole area. And sometimes when you hit that higher ground, you're going to see those borders, those rivers. Sometimes you're going to see the trail. Often you're going to see roads, or you might even see towns in the distance. So that's great. But here's one thing you don't want to do, and we see it in the movies all the time. Last time I went winter camping, I actually watched The Gray, Liam Neeson. Yeah, they followed the river down. They all died. That gentleman I talked about earlier followed the river down. He died. Not to say following a river is a terrible idea necessarily. Water goes downhill. It eventually goes to bigger rivers, into the ocean, wherever. Problem with that is that it tends to be swampy, rocky, rugged along the side of rivers. And often you can get cliffed out. By that I mean you come to a space along that river where there's a waterfall or just the water plunging, and then suddenly you find yourself in a draw that you can't climb out of and you're stuck. So following water downstream, not necessarily the best idea. So I just wanted to mention that because it's something we see in movies a lot, and it kind of makes sense intuitively to follow it. And if you know that the trailhead was by a particular river or stream where you started, yeah, I mean, that's going to make some sense, right? But otherwise, you're better to just stay put as long as you've left an itinerary. All right, so for those of you who like to have something easy to remember, little acronym junkies, when you think you're lost, stop. And there's an acronym for that, and that is STOP. Stop where you are. Think. So this is where we think about, when were we lost? Where did we come from? How did we get here? All right. O is observe. Look around. See what you can see. Look for landmarks, what you have at your disposal to help you. And then P is plan. And again, backtracking usually is going to be the way to get found if you're off trail. If you're on trail and you think you're lost, backtracking is 100% of the time the right thing to do, because eventually you're just going to end up where you started. And usually that's where your car is. If you read a lot of survival books, things like that, it talks about signaling people. If it's fire season, it's not a great idea to build a giant fire to get attention, because you might burn down the whole forest, and you're not going to outrun that. Having said that, I mean, if you're hearing planes, you've left an itinerary, you've been huddled up for 3 or 4 days, yeah, absolutely. But the best thing is, if you know you've been lost for several days and search and rescue is likely looking for you, it's really good to try to find a clear area, a clearing, a meadow. Put your equipment out. If you've got emergency blankets, those are reflective. Those are easily seen from the air. People get lost. The vast majority of the people that get lost get found or find their own way out. But you need to keep your head. A lot of backpacks have whistles on the SRAM strap, or you can bring a whistle. 3 blasts is the traditional signal for needing help. So if you ever are out in the woods and you hear 3 gunshots, it's likely not a murder-suicide. It's probably somebody that needs help or they're lost as well. So 3 blasts of whatever traditionally signals help. And that sound carries pretty far. But nowadays, navigation on a phone, on a Garmin, something like that, it's a great idea, but those things can die. Now, one way to preserve batteries on those devices on your phone is put it in airplane mode, because otherwise it's going to be searching for signal when there is no signal, and that's going to drain your battery a lot faster. So airplane mode, your GPS app is still going to work for you there. So if you've got that, honestly, I use Gaia. There's plenty of different apps. It's been super helpful for me when I get off trail a little ways, or I'll check it and see that I took a wrong turn on a wrong trail and I don't have to backtrack as far. So we're really blessed in this day and age to have that, but it's also a great idea to have a paper map as a backup because technology fails. Learn how to use a map and compass. It's not only helpful if you were to be lost, it's fun to learn. So again, I'll put a link to the book. It's a great idea. It's a great skill. So don't panic. Appears that we found a trail. And see where it takes us. You can check out some of the playlists on the channel. Consider subscribing. I'm also always happy to hear feedback about what people want to know, because I'm about 25 years removed from being a new backpacker. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.